The first snows came early to the isolated mountain village of Pine Hollow, Montana. Nestled deep within the Rocky Mountains, the community of 40 souls had weathered harsh winters for generations. But this season carried an unnatural chill that seeped into the bones. Old Man Henderson's joints ached more fiercely than usual, a discomfort he dismissed as age until the milk soured overnight in every churn. Then the dogs began, a chorus of mournful howls rising simultaneously from every yard at midnight, shattering the frozen silence. By dawn, even the chickens huddled motionless beneath straw, sensing what the villagers refused to acknowledge. Death had arrived with the blizzard. Blacksmith Mitchell Carter's absence at morning chores raised no immediate alarm. When young John Miller knocked repeatedly on the cabin door, his breath frosting in the air, only silence answered. Peering through a frosted window pane, John's blood turned to ice. Mitchell lay sprawled before the cold hearth, glassy eyes fixed on the ceiling, fingers still curled around his antique hunting rifle. Beside him, his wife Natalie embraced their 17-year-old daughter Sarah, or what remained of her. A savage gash tore across Sarah's throat, her protective gesture forever frozen. In the handmade cradle, 6-month-old Anthony slept the eternal sleep, tiny face peaceful despite the horror surrounding him. Panic spread faster than the gathering storm. Within the hour, every able-bodied resident crowded into the clapboard chapel, breath steaming in the unheated space. Whispers ricocheted off the bare walls like frightened birds. "Sarah, pretty as a mountain flower," murmured Mrs. Gable, wringing her mittened hands. Who'd slit a child's throat? Even the baby. Her voice broke as the heavy oak doors creaked open. John entered first, supporting the village medic, Steve Peterson. Though Steve swayed slightly, his eyes held the sharp focus of a man fighting intoxication with sheer willpower. Behind them strode Robert Vance, a retired detective whose 35 years with the Chicago PD showed in his assessing gaze. The collective intake of breath was audible as Steve leaned against a pew, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. "Out with it, Steve," demanded Old Man Henderson. "What happened at Mitchell's?" Steve exhaled smoke, watching it curl toward the rafters. "Butchered." Natalie's neck snapped clean. Sarah's throat ripped open. Even the baby. He paused, grinding his cigarette butt under his boot. No blood. Not a drop in any of them. A stunned silence fell. Robert stepped forward, his voice cutting through the stillness. "I checked the wounds. Arteries severed, but dry as bone. Whatever did this, drained them." John clutched the St. Christopher medal at his throat. "We need to bury them before dark. Please, Robert." "Not yet." Robert's gaze swept the terrified faces. "Something's wrong with the ground. Felt it yesterday at Old Man Riley's burial, like the earth itself was hungry." The cemetery perched on a wind-scoured hillside, its picket fence half buried in drifts. 6 fresh graves needed digging through frozen earth, and every man worked in grim silence. The only sounds the crack of splitting permafrost and the moan of the gale. John paused, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cold. "Look at the Riley plot." 2 freshly covered graves lay disturbingly sunken, as if their occupants had thrashed upward before the soil settled. Fresh powder filled the depressions, yet the impression remained, a void screaming to be filled. "Wendigo," whispered Old Man Henderson, making the sign of the cross. "Spirits that feast on human flesh. They've woken hungry this winter." Steve laughed bitterly. "Ghost stories won't help us, old-timer." But his knuckles whitened around his shovel handle. When shadows lengthened, the exhausted crew trudged back toward the cluster of cabins. Snow-laden pines loomed like specters, and twice men swore they saw pale figures dancing through the blizzard, skeletal shapes that vanished when approached. Arrival brought new horror. 3 cabins stood dark and empty. The Miller sisters' door gaped open, revealing overturned chairs and an uneaten stew cooling on the stove. Shepherd Thomas's home showed signs of struggle, a shattered lantern, drag marks in the hearth ash. Worst was the Cooper residence. 5 people vanished without trace, a half-knitted sweater abandoned on the rocking chair. No blood, no bodies, only absence. That night, Alice Dawson lay awake listening to the storm rage. Her husband, Michael, had been among the cemetery crew who never returned. Their 4-year-old daughter, Emma, slept fitfully beside her, clutching a rag doll. A sudden scraping at the window pane jolted Alice upright. Heart pounding, she extinguished her oil lamp and peered into the darkness. Michael. Her breath fogged the glass. Outside, her husband stood knee-deep in snow, his parka dusted white. "Darling, you're frozen! Come inside!" Logic screamed warnings. Robert's drained bodies, the vanished families, but joy overrode fear. She flung open the door. Michael shuffled across the threshold, movements stiff as a marionette's. Lamplight revealed his face, waxen, colorless, devoid of the ruddy vitality she loved. Only his eyes held life, dark pits burning with desperate, hollow hunger. He reached for her, fingers like icicles. "Cold," he rasped, voice like gravel in a tin can. "So cold inside." Alice recoiled, pressing against the wall. "What happened to you?" "Need warmth." He advanced, lips peeling back from unnaturally sharp teeth. "Your warmth." Emma's sleepy whimper broke the spell. Alice snatched the fire poker. "Get out!" Michael's mournful sigh held centuries of loneliness. "Shouldn't have opened the door, Alice." Behind him, shadows coalesced into 3 more figures, Thomas the shepherd and the Miller sisters, their eyes identically ravenous. John found Steve and Robert huddled in Robert's cabin, the air thick with wood smoke and dread. Steve chain-smoked while Robert stared into the blizzard through frost-rimed glass. 25 cabins dark already, Robert muttered. They're hunting house to house. Robert, John corrected himself, clutching his rosary. "We need help. The state police." "I'll go." Robert pulled on his snowsuit. "Skied these mountains since I was 10. I'll reach Elk Creek by dawn." Steve poured 3 fingers of moonshine into tin cups. "Storm will kill you before they do. Better than waiting here for those things." Robert downed his drink in one burning swallow. John crossed himself as the ex-cop vanished into the white void. Later, at his own cabin, John nailed garlic wreaths over every window before barricading himself, his wife Clara, and their toddler son in the root cellar. Clara wept silently, clutching the boy. "What are they, John?" "Demons wearing familiar faces," he whispered, reloading his grandfather's Winchester. "Robert said no blood in the bodies? That's because it's all in the creatures that wore them." Upstairs, something heavy slammed against the door. Wood splintered. Clara screamed as a guttural snarl echoed through the floorboards. No wolf ever sounded so intelligent, so maliciously deliberate. The root cellar door exploded inward. John glimpsed yellow eyes and matted fur before the werewolf lunged. He fired twice, the shots deafening in the confined space. The beast staggered, but 2 more crowded the doorway. In that heartbeat of clarity, John did the merciful thing. A single bullet spared Clara and their son from the creature's hunger. Then fangs tore into his throat. and darkness swallowed him. Steve sat in his armchair facing the front door, a kerosene lantern at his feet. On his lap lay a hunting knife, its blade resting against a tripwire strung to a ceiling beam. Above, a 10-gallon bucket swayed gently, sloshing with the stench of accelerant. Outside, fingernails scraped the window, a sound like bones on glass. "Door's open!" Steve called cheerfully, lighting his last cigarette. "Come on in!" The door creaked open. Thomas the shepherd shuffled in first, frost clinging to his eyelashes. Behind him crowded Michael Dawson and the Miller sisters, their mouths unnaturally wide. Steve took a long drag, exhaling smoke toward the bucket. "Welcome home," he said, and slashed the rope. Flames engulfed the entryway in a whoosh of superheated air. Kerosene sprayed in a wide arc, dousing the revenants and igniting wallpaper, curtains, and dry timber. Steve's laughter rose above the crackling inferno as the burning creatures stumbled against furniture, spreading the blaze. Within minutes, the cabin became a beacon in the storm, flames licking through the roof. Fire leapt from roof to roof, fanned by the howling wind. Abandoned homes became pyres as the creatures trapped inside shrieked, a sound not of pain, but of furious indignation. Snow melted in great steaming patches around each burning structure, revealing the blood-soaked earth beneath. By midnight, Pine Hollow was an archipelago of fire in a sea of white, the crackling roar drowning out the final cries of the damned. On a distant ridge, Robert Vance paused in his ski trek, watching the hellish glow stain the blizzard crimson. He counted the columns of fire, 20, 25, then no more. Pulling his scarf tighter against the biting wind, he turned toward Elk Creek. Help wouldn't save Pine Hollow now, but if these horrors could cross mountains, someone needed to warn the world. Dawn was still hours away. In the burning ruins, shadows moved, elongated, misshapen things that drank the light and grew stronger. The long night had only just begun.